Hi, I'm Wes Chester. I'm the director of the Expressive Arts Institute and also a curator of the Martha Pace Swift Gallery at Liberty Station. And I am an expressive arts therapist and educator. And I would like to just share a little bit about the expressive arts as a field and also about answering your questions, which I received from Anna. Um, let's see, my background. How did I become interested in the creative life? I think it found me, and probably if you look at your own life examples, maybe you have someone in there that was an influence, maybe not. My experience is I didn't grow up with any artists. I didn't grow up knowing that you could be an artist. I didn't know that there was anyone who was an artist who wasn't on television, I guess. Uh, that was my only exposure. I do remember loving art from an early age, and especially uh, in the time I was growing up, a lot of the images around art were of pop art, very bold, simplified, exciting images, good for the eye, primary colors like Roy Lichtenstein. Uh, these kind of works really attracted me when I was a kid, and I did have a real aesthetic. Even then, I knew what I liked in the arts, and it wasn't, the classic uh, oil paintings of the 18th century. I was very much enlivened by this playful approach to art. And so I was really a fish out of water in that way. I was growing up in a rural community, a farming community. My first 16 years, my jobs were all working on my grandfather's farm and doing whatever needed to be done around there, which is a lot. Uh, I learned to really respect farmers because they are married to the job like nobody else. But I knew even then that that wasn't going to be my path. So I was able over time to uh, find out more about this arts thing. I began playing guitar when I was 16, which is, I think, also the same age I was whenever I entered my first actual art gallery. Um, and so I had never been to an art museum before then, and it was really exciting to go in and see paintings that I had also seen in books and realize the difference in that real presence. It's quite amazing to encounter work face to face, and it's still really my favorite way. Years ago, I was asked by the NTC Foundation director if I thought that my gallery was going to become extraneous because of the internet. And more on that later, but in short, there is no replacement for a direct encounter with the image. And there are lots and lots of reasons for that, which I'll also dip into a bit later. As far as education, I never had any formal arts education after the two courses that I took in 11th and 12th grade. That was it for anything for me in the arts directly. My mother was a choir director, so I grew up singing. That was helpful for the songwriting business. And I also grew up writing. I started my first book when I was 8 years old. Uh, and I have actually completed a couple of books since then, but uh, it just lets you know where my head was already. And I think that that's what you should be looking for as a creative. Look for your passion. What is it that makes you a creative? What's that big attractor for you? Um, yeah, next question was about kind of jobs that I've had. And I have not had every dirty job that you can have, but I've had some pretty challenging jobs and interesting jobs over the years that had nothing to do with the arts or my field. Um, I was a barista and a bartender and a busboy and a waiter and a party rental dishwasher, satellite downlink technician, mental health worker, graduate school educator, technical customer support rep. Uh, I was a manager of a mental health clubhouse for a few years. Uh, I did long distance fiber optic networking equipment installation. Um, I've been a curator for 20 years and worked for Story Arts for a while, which is an organization that collects personal life stories and edits them into book form. That was an interesting job. I've been an editor. I suppose being an expressive arts therapist and educator is my primary uh, role now, and my curatorial role is an aside that I enjoy very much and take seriously, but it's definitely not the money-making part of the operation. So for those of you who are asking about a gallery, reasons not to open a gallery are because you're going to make a ton of money. At least not if you're me. I'm not making a ton of money at the gallery space. Um, so what's the Expressive Arts Institute was one of the questions. The Institute is a training program for professionals who want to be helpful through the arts. So it's really quite important to have that picture that we're not an art school. We're not teaching artistic skills. What we're doing is we're teaching people who already have artistic skills how to use those skills along with techniques and methods that are specific to our field in order to help people create and manage change in their lives. So you can think of it as art therapy, but it's quite expanded. First of all, we don't only use visual art. We also use drama and dance and movement and creative writing. And so all those components can mesh together in order to make a helping profession that allows people to use their creative imagination to recover from loss, to change their outlook, to relieve their depression or anxiety. It's a very fulfilling field and one that I love to work in. I worked 17 years in Lock Ward Mental Health doing exactly that, helping people that were locked up and at some level of psychosis to turn their imagination from an enemy into an ally. It's a really important concept because we all have our moments of negative imagination. And right now, probably in COVID, is a huge one for most of you when you wonder, well, what the hell is going to be going on in a year? Is there going to be a place for me to work? Is there going to be a place for me to show? And that's all the negative imagination and anticipation of problems down the road. Fortunately, I think it's probably not as grim as any of us foresee, because I don't think we can yet foresee the ways in which we will culturally adapt to COVID, and we have no idea how long until there will be treatments or vaccines, but there will be treatments and vaccines. And there will be enough testing at some point that we have a good idea how safe it is to undertake any particular activity or gathering. That said, I know that there are concerns for everyone now about where the economy will be and where the work will be in the years ahead. And I have no more answers to those than you do. But I will say that having worked in the arts for the past 20 years, pretty well exclusively, I feel more prepared for the unknown than I've ever been in my life at this point. That's something that the arts do for you. You know, if you are hoping to get into the arts in order to feel validated and secure and like you know what's going on, probably you should consider accounting. But if you're coming into the arts because you just can't help it, you have to express yourself, you need to put your images out there, you need to comment on the world around you, and you need to engage your imagination and try and create some wonder for people, then you're definitely in the right place. And don't allow yourself to be pushed out of that idea by any particular persuasive argument about where you'll make more income or where you'll have more security. Because as far as I can tell, security is a fantasy in contemporary America. You know, we don't have security. What we have is ambition, maybe, a drive to create, a need to connect with other people and to fulfill our needs in that arena. I think all of those are important, and more important than a fantasy security, which we don't really necessarily have. So I'll talk about the Swift Gallery in particular. It's named the Swift after our donor. It's the Martha Pace Swift Gallery. And the daughter of Martha Pace Swift donated $5,000 for me to design and outfit the space and put lights in. And then some curatorial stipend for the first couple of years, which was nice. Look for people who love the arts, and sometimes the money will follow. So the Swift, I opened it because ever since I've been in San Diego, I've had a studio space, and for many years that was on Ray Street, where we had a monthly gallery crawl. And so I had a 2-night art show every month while I was on Ray Street. And I realized whenever we relocated to Liberty Station about 10 years ago that I now would be able to leave an art show up for 2 or even 3 months at a time to allow for time for people to come see it and not see it on a crowded opening night, and allow it to live in the space. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years. We do mainly solo shows. 3 of the 4 shows per year are usually solo artists. The 4th show every year up until this year has been Recovering the Artist, which is a show about art made by people in recovery from addiction, substance abuse, loss, grief, depression, anxiety, severe mental illness, physical illness, physical injury. It really can be in recovery from anything. And it's been a wonderful and compelling show, and one that I take seriously as a community service. I think that whenever people are using their images that they have to create these images in order to survive. And when they're willing to share them, it somehow helps share the burden. So they're powerful. It's a powerful show in that way that gives you a really backdoor view into the imagination and experience of people who have been in extreme situations, whether they were returning vets from Iraq and Afghanistan, or whether they are people who are survivors of domestic violence and abuse. Really powerful work comes in, and surprisingly hopeful work as well. So that's one of the missions of the SWIFT, is to be a community catalyst for the vision of what recovery looks like and what art looks like in the space of recovery, in the space of using the imagination to heal the mental health of the person. I think, these ideas, the idea that every artist that I show, there's a social and political component to their work. That's important to me. I'm not showing sofa art at the SWIFT. I think everything needs to have meaning. The current show, which probably no one's ever going to see, is called Tehran 92106. It's about 3 women artists, expat artists from Iran, who now live and have lived for many years in the U.S., and their artistic output as painters, wanting to see how the sort of Persian influence remains. And this show was mounted as a direct response to Donald Trump threatening to bomb World Heritage sites within Iran. And I felt, well, why don't we honor what contemporary Iranian artists are doing and think about the idea of that cultural threat as a kind of illness, to threaten a culture for political means. It makes us no better, I think, than ISIS or anyone else who destroys artifacts in quest of a certain political outcome. Okay, so the SWIFT. As a gallery, I think it's a wonderful community resource. And it's connected me with so many artists, and I'm really grateful for that. Also, I think it's a great opportunity to educate and enlighten people who are casual viewers. That's a really nice thing about a place like Liberty Station, is people will come out for the art walk without knowing that they're coming for the art. They'll come because it's an event. But then once they're there, they will actually wake up to the idea that images have power and value and are worthwhile. I think that's a very good thing for the arts community. In the end, we need to build collectors, and people need to be convinced that there's a reason why an original image is valuable and is worth paying for. Now, people have asked, as part of this question, of course, what about galleries now? Now that we can't gather, are galleries going to be something that survives this? I like to think so. I like to think that there is no replacement for a face-to-face encounter with a work of art. You can't get the same feeling any other way. It's just like going to a concert versus listening to a CD or listening to an MP3. It's just like going to a play instead of watching something on Netflix. The live experience is different, and the encounter with the image that's unmediated by technology. So it's not a screen, it's not an image of an image, it's the actual artifact. That's right, artifact. That's what people are actually looking for in their artistic experiences in the world. That's what makes it special to go to Paris, and not so special to see a picture of the Mona Lisa in a textbook. It's just a different and entirely novel situation whenever you are there for the first time in person in front of a painting that you have never encountered. It's a really core principle of our field as expressive arts therapists that we don't want people coming in and telling us about their dream images. I mean, they're welcome, but the first thing I'm going to do is have you create an image of the dream image. Then we have something real in the room that we can both see and talk about and use to explore the imaginal realm and see if there is some solution suggested to the challenges that you're facing in your life through the work of this image. It's kind of what we do. So I think we need galleries. We'll always need galleries. I think that we're well past the time whenever galleries should be ventures of art dealers instead of collaborative ventures of artists. If I was going to found a gallery now outside of this system that I'm in, I would collaborate with artists, with member artists, to have the gallery space, so that then it becomes a community resource again. I really think that you would just hear me say over and over again, we need to resource the community as artists, because the community needs art. They really do. Okay, so I guess one of the most important things that I think about as an expressive arts therapist is the idea that we are in our education working on existential ideas. So ideas that bear on the very biggest questions in life about life and death, and what does it mean to live a good life? What does it mean to be useful in your community? So whenever I'm educating graduate students in expressive arts therapy, what I'm really educating them in is in a way to look at life. And I think any arts education is failed if that's not a root part of what it does. If all it's doing is teaching technique, you could learn it with a master artist as an apprentice. You could learn it on YouTube in some cases. You can get a text. Technique is important and great to have, but it is not the creative potential part of the arts. The technique sometimes is what puts the brakes on your potentiality. And making mistakes and breaking the technique is sometimes the thing that allows you to move forward in your work and make new discoveries. The other thing that I would say and underline to you is this. You're always doing research whenever you're doing art. And you're doing aesthetically based research. What will happen if I press harder with the charcoal or softer? How will the quality of line vary if I use a different tooth of paper? Those are kind of basic researches that artists are doing all the time as they're finding out how they can cooperate with that material to produce an image. Vitally important stuff. But you also, whenever you make art in response to the world, one of the things that you are researching is maybe how you feel about that particular world. How do you feel about COVID-19? It's pretty easy to string together a bunch of words about it. But if you make art about your experience of COVID-19, I think you find that you might learn something through the eye and through the hand that the head doesn't yet know. So if you are going into the arts, you are going into research. And the most fundamentally existential research that you can have, the research about what it means to be you here now in this place. So it's quite powerful to work in the arts in that way. My job as an expressive arts therapist is to be the bridge to the arts for people who are naive artists, and to be the support for the arts for people who are more well-developed artists that come to see me, all with the idea that I know that whatever image is emergent for them will contain valuable information. It's just the way it is. That saying, no matter where you go, there you are. Well, when you go into the art, whatever image comes out, even if you're not focused on a particular problem or challenge in your life, is going to have something to say about all the challenges in your life, because it's a product born of you. And so you have created an image that now comes for your benefit. So the image comes for your benefit to help you decide what it is you would like to try as a next step in your life to address these challenges or problems. So I do recommend the arts as therapy very highly. And I also recommend, if you're a person who's very interested in that type of helping, that you look into the expressive arts, because it does give you a place to use your best artistic potential and your highest skill in the service of low skill, high sensitivity facilitation of someone else's art making, and helps you resource them. That is about as useful a thing as you can do in the world. So if you get tired of the gallery scene and system, know that expressive arts is out there, and it is much more natural transition than it would be if you were, for instance, going into traditional art therapy. Remember, we're based on the aesthetics and language of the studio and on existential philosophy. We're not based in psychology in our helping. We believe that the imagination is the most valuable thing that a person has, because if you can't imagine that your life is ever going to be different, it's very unlikely to change. The first thing that has to change is the imagination. Finally, advice. You're an artist. You should work in the arts. I know it's kind of scary right now, but it has been my experience over the years. I went into computer electronics. I did that because of Laurie Anderson, to be honest, because I loved her work with technology, and I was like, I want to be able to build those instruments, and I've done that, done some of that type of work. But in the back of my mind was the idea that you can guarantee a better income by getting a tech degree. Well, this turns out not to be exactly correct. As a matter of fact, again, as I said earlier, there are very few or no guarantees in America. We used to say death and taxes, but this year even taxes are delayed, right? You don't know. Here's what I know. You do have a finite amount of time on this earth. Absolutely finite and passing faster than you know. And if you spend your time wisely, that will be in the doing of things that are of value to you, that give you satisfaction and joy, that bring hope to other people or inspiration to other people. Those are the things that make the time you spend worth the time it has cost of your finite time on earth. Don't become a biotech worker just because you think there will be a better payday in it. Something's going to happen. The company is going to shut down or move to China. The patent is going to fall through, and then you don't have that job, and you spent your time working towards a goal that didn't offer any security. Since the 1980s, I've been downsized, right-sized, laid off, fired, consciously uncoupled from many jobs. It's something that you have to think about. You're likely to have at least 4 or 5 different careers in your time. But those could all be within the arts. somebody has to do it. If you're the creatives, why not you? Don't leave it to posers and people who don't need to do this work. What you're going to find out in the end is that you are your own best advice on that. If you love the arts, do the arts. The world needs you. Thanks for your time. And good luck.